Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Caleb with Devslopes.com, and in this video, we're going to talk about what makes an Alexa skill. We're going to peel off the wrapper and look inside to see what it's made of. You'll hear some terms that you learned in the last video and just kind of some repeated content, but there is a bit more specific information in this video that is really important for you to know. But we're going to begin actually by looking at the Alexa Skills Store. So I'm going to go ahead and pull open Safari here, and this is the Alexa Skills Store. If you have the Alexa app, or if you log in at PETA and GUI, that's what I call it. I don't know what it's really called, but GUI, obviously for graphical user interface, .amazon.com, you can log in to your Amazon account and view everything here just like you would in your Alexa app, which is kind of cool. So there are skills for just about everything. You can play a game of Jeopardy. You can play Name That Tune with Song Quiz. Beyond that, there are, relaxation skills. Like they can play nature sounds. You can get news, like a flash briefing of the daily news from whatever news channel you subscribe to. And there are also tons of smart home skills. If you have the Ecobee, if you have a Circle device from Disney, if you have Eero home Wi-Fi, you can use that to find your phone, which is super cool. So there's just a ton of skills in here. And while it might seem like there's a lot, there's only 15,000. Compare that to the 10 million Alexa device users. Okay, it's pretty incredible how non-overpopulated it is. Okay, there's a lot of opportunity here for you as a developer. So this is the skills store, and of course, if there is a certain skill that you want, you can click on it, and then in order to enable it, you just click enable, and then you usually have to link an account if it's for like a smart device like the Eero home Wi-Fi system. But that is just one skill in particular of thousands. And so that is the skill store. But now we're going to discuss what actually makes these skills up. We're going to peel back the curtain. We're going to look inside and figure out what's going on. So inside of every skill, right at its center, is its nucleus. It's not true, but we do have two separate things. We have one, the skill service, and two, the skill interface. Okay, we talked about these in the previous video. The skill service is a service container, okay, and this either utilizes an HTTPS server of your own or AWS Lambda, which, as I talked about in the previous video, AWS Lambda is a compute service that allows you to run code without needing to do any fancy provisioning or managing servers or anything like that. It's all done in AWS, which is really, really cool. It executes that code when you need it, and that's all. Okay, so it's not running all the time, costing you a lot of money. It runs when you need it to run, which is really, really cool as far as saving you money goes. It scales automatically, so if you suddenly get an influx of users, it has the ability to scale itself, so you're not going to run into issues of crashes or people having to wait forever because your skill is overloaded. You only pay for the time that you actually consume when people are there. So it's just very, very cool. It's really well done. And AWS Lambda is where we are going to house our code for our Alexa skill. So the Lambda function is going to be written, not the Lambda function, but the code in AWS Lambda is going to be written in a file called index.js, okay? Now, index.js is just going to be a very simple JavaScript file where we're basically going to import the Alexa SDK. We're going to write a couple functions. We're going to write some static data, and then basically, depending on what we say, it's going to go ahead and make a suggestion for us, okay? Pretty cool stuff. Now, aside from the skill service, there's the skill interface. Now, this is where all of the voice stuff happens, okay? Now, utterances are one component of the skill interface, and that's where we are going to have to brainstorm what kinds of things a user might say in order to interact with our skill. In my example, in the previous video, I said, ask Devslopes to suggest a course. That's an utterance, suggest a course. I mentioned that it also could be, tell me a course I might like, or give me a great course on iOS development. Okay, you could make specific utterances with specific pieces of information. And that brings us to slot types. Okay, so a slot type is I like to think of it sort of like a custom class. Okay? Now, Amazon has a bunch of built-in slot types like the date. Okay? Date is an Amazon provided slot type. Year, birthday, celebrity names. They're basically libraries of information that are stored under a specific category like date, names, years, costs, currencies, things like that, generic information. But we will take advantage of Amazon's custom slot type. And we're going to go ahead and create a custom slot called category. And in that category is going to be a bunch of different categories for the skill that we're going to build. It's very, very cool. And basically, the particular utterance, if I were to be specific and say, suggest an iOS course, when I create my utterances, I can basically create a placeholder that will accept a particular instance of my category slot type. So if I were to be making a skill that would suggest Swift libraries, my one category could be animation, right? So I could say suggest an animation library. And if the word I speak matches one of the items from the category slot, then it would know to find that in my code and suggest that suggestion. So a slot type is basically just kind of like a box that holds a bunch of specific information, and then our words can then trigger that information to be retrieved and then spoken with Alexa. Now, the intent schema is just a big piece of this. We're going to have a couple different intents, one of them being the course suggestion intent. That was the example I gave in the previous video. But the intent schema is basically just a little JSON file that says, hey, we're going to be using the default Amazon intents like help, like cancel, like stop. And then we're also going to use a custom intent like course suggestion or library suggestion. It could be anything, right? Because this is our skill. We get to build it. So as you can see, there are two different pieces to every skill, the skill service and the skill interface. Okay? They are both required to have a working skill, and they interact with each other and bounce back and forth between one another in order to work properly. So this is what a skill is like. If you peel back the paint, you can see this is what it really is in all its glory. It's pretty darn simple, if you ask me. There are many, many ways this could be more complicated, especially when dealing with building your own HTTPS server, but that goes beyond the scope of this course. So we're going to be using AWS Lambda, but I hope that this gives you enough information for you to understand how skills actually work. And if you want, feel free to research it. Go onto the Amazon developer site, dive through the documentation, and figure out for yourself how this actually works. That's what I always recommend students to do, is to go discover for yourself as well, to reinforce and sort of concrete in those foundational concepts that you just learned. So let's head over to the next video and let's set up our Amazon developer account so we can dive right in. This is Caleb with Devslopes.com.